Bookseller Crow on the box. Tales from an empty bookshop.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our latest edition of Talks from an Empty Bookshop, where tonight we are visited all the way from Massachusetts by Peter Swanson, author of 7 tricky and truth-shifting thrillers, the latest of which is Every Vow You Break. And if you think that reference to the creepy police song is a portent for something nasty in the woodshed, you wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah,
Peter,
correct.
welcome.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
How's the last year of pandemic been for you?
All told, I feel lucky in the sense that my job obviously involves me staying at home and writing, and so I haven't changed much. And in general, my cat's made an appearance. In general, my life hasn't been turned too upside down. So I feel like I don't have a lot to complain about. But still, it's been a hard year for multiple reasons. Not seeing family members, feeling cooped up, all those things that everyone else is going through. It's been odd, and I definitely, as a writer, I had a great streak early on in the year where I felt like I was able to concentrate on writing, and then I hit a streak, I think end of summer going into fall, where the COVID news and then our election cycle, I just felt like I couldn't concentrate on reading or writing, and I was just doing what I think everyone in America was doing, which is just refreshing their news feed again and again, and living in this loop of outside news, much of which was unpleasant, and that's no way to live. So I'm looking forward to things breaking out a little more and getting out in the world, as I'm sure everyone is.
This is slightly freaking me out because your cat looks very similar to my cat.
Ooh, creepy. Well, now she's like all of us. She's just gazing out the window.
Yeah.
So like there's a world out there, and I haven't been part of it. But yes, this is my writing companion, Finty, Finty. She's I often write on this couch, and she likes to sort of get up and be above me, which is her. She prefers to be above me in all ways, look down on me.
Peter, I read it on the internet, so it must be true. You used to be a bookseller.
Oh yeah. My first job out of college was a bookseller at a really great independent bookstore in Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Wordsworth Books, which is unfortunately out of business. But I did that for sort of full time for about 5 years, and then I returned there often, help out over Christmas holidays or pick up shifts. But I really loved it, and if I needed to return to a job now, I would certainly look at Bookseller as a place I'd be happy to return to.
I actually have a connection with Wordsworth myself, because many years ago they developed one of the first computerized systems, and I ran a shop that was one of the first that used it in this country. And
do you remember what it was called?
Oh,
because I think I do. Wordstock.
It was Wordstock. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Hillel Savis was the owner of the store, and he developed that software. And I think, we used it too. I mean, it was one of the first, and he was a real sort of computer guy. And I think he was just kind of, if Amazon hadn't happened, he would have developed Amazon. He just missed that a little, but Wordstock worked well, I think. And the bookstore was terrific, actually, a really high volume, exciting place to work in a bookish part of the world, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Well, I mean, I brought up your book selling past because it seems to me that a lot of the richness of your books comes from you being a fan and an enthusiast of the books that have come before the ones that you're writing, and there's often knowing nods to them in your books, you know, obvious ones sometimes, like Strangers on a Train or something, but also a lot more subtle ones as well. And I take a lot of pleasure in the amount of other kind of cultural references that you always put into your books, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I love doing it. And I also, as a reader, when I'm reading a book, and let's say there's two characters, and they go on a date in the book, and they say, "Oh, we went to see a movie," and they don't tell you what movie. I'm just, as a reader, I'm like, well, you know, why are you not telling us what movie you went to? Ridiculous. I need to know these things. And so I make sure, if my characters are reading books or watching movies, that they're referenced. And then I often reference books and movies that are important to me, not always, sometimes. And then one of the things that I like to do, which is, you know, if I feel as though I'm kind of slightly ripping off someone else's plot, you know, to draw up in a reference. So in Kind Worth Killing, which kind of lifts the plot line of Strangers on a Train, I made sure that very early on, the character Lily Kintner's reading a Patricia Highsmith book. She's actually reading Two Faces of January at the bar.
Doesn't like it very much.
And doesn't like it very much. But what I'm doing, of course, is trying to get in there first. So before the person thinks, well, this guy's just ripped off Patricia Highsmith, I mentioned Patricia Highsmith, and then it looks like an homage as opposed to pure straight up plagiarism.
But it's more than that, though, isn't it? And I mean, that sort of, you took that to an extreme with Rules of
Yes.
Murders, which features a bookseller and also 8 perfect murders from various crime novels.
Crime that are getting copycatted in my fictional universe. Yeah. That was so much fun to write, because I just let myself go, you know, put in as many references as I felt I could cram in there.
And there's one of the things that fascinates me as well about your plots is there's often a kind of an opposition between a bohemian aspect, if you like, of writers or people working on small magazines or poets, or in the case of Every Vow You Break, the parents running a theatre company for 20 odd years, but sailing, and they rub against something that's a bit more vulgar, and that almost forms a kind of nexus for your plot in a sense. I mean, with Abigail, you know, she's trying to write a novel. She's working. Abigail's the main character in this. She's trying to write a novel. She's working for a poetry press, but then she marries a tech billionaire. So you've got your friction there, I think.
Yeah, she sort of stumbles into this relationship with a very unarty guy, and one of the things I wanted to explore with that, which is, I think, a feeling that I've had at one point, which is, you know, having done an MFA in creative writing, or spending time with a lot of writers, and maybe this is just me, but at some point being like, can we stop talking about writing and poetry and all that, and just be regular people? That she spent all this time with creative people, that he kind of zooms in there, and he of course appeals to her a little bit for the money. I wouldn't say she's a gold digger, but her parents have had money troubles, so she's aware of this thing. But he also appeals to her because he's not an over analyzer like people in the creative world who, you know, sit down and watch a movie and then you have to discuss everything that was wrong with it, as opposed to just sitting down and watching a movie and enjoying it. So I liked that she was at this weird crossroads in her 20s, where she was sort of trying to decide what type of person do I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I'm not sure I wanted to be the boozy poet boyfriend who's constantly like arguing about Sylvia Plath in the bar. Am I really up for that for my entire life? So I think that's one of the ways I built up the character of Abigail, and also that she comes from a creative background, that from parents that had started this theater, and been kicked a little because there wasn't money in it. So it interested me. It felt like it gave a place for Abigail to come from, because unlike some of my characters, I often write main characters that are in a gray area morally, that might be considering becoming a criminal and might have a traumatic thing in their past. I wanted Abigail to be essentially an every woman in many ways, someone to whom extraordinary events and terrifying events unfurl upon her. So this was a way to sort of build her character as an ordinary American, 20-year-old, or not 20, but 28-year-old, or whatever she is.
Do you fancy reading just a small snippet?
Yeah, I will read. I got my nice UK version here. Let me just read. I'll read the first page, which kind of jumps into the essential early part of the plot, which is a stalker plot. And I don't need to set it up because it's the first page, and hopefully it'll set up itself. She first spotted him at Bobby's coffee shop on 22nd Street. He was at a window seat, idly looking at his phone, a white mug in front of him. Abigail was on her way to the office for her half day, dodging pedestrians on the sidewalk, thinking about the wedding, wondering if maybe she should have invited her cousin Donald and his wife, whose name she always forgot. Her feet kept moving, but it was as though her heart had skipped a beat. It was definitely him, same wiry frame, same beard, same high cheekbones. Even through the glare coming off the plate glass window, she recognized him right away. And she also knew that he'd come to New York City because of her. He must have. When she made it to her office and settled down at her desk, her heart still thudding, she took a moment to consider all the possibilities. First of all, why was she so sure he was here to find her? She lived in New York, not some small town that no one visited. He could be here on vacation, here to visit friends, here for work. And even if he had come here to find her, how much did he even know about her? They hadn't given each other their real names. She still only knew him as Scotty, and he knew her as Madeline. She told herself there was nothing to worry about and tried to concentrate on work.
Thank you. Thanks. There would normally be a round of applause that would shake the room. In this book in particular, as well as a lot of previous book references, there's an awful lot of movie references, and in particular, I really was taken by the game that Abigail and her father play about what movie I'll be in now, which is a lovely idea. I particularly liked his disappointment that he thought it was Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Which she did not know. Yeah. Although so her father and her play a game where if they're in a particular circumstance, I think an example they use is sitting in a park and seeing birds gathering in a tree. One of them will turn to the other and say, what movie are we in? And they'll say, well, we're in the birds now. And it was a point of reference for them that he's a movie buff and had shared that love with her. And she picked up on it. But yeah, oftentimes they see themselves in different movies. Right.
I'm also taken in I think in all of your books by the amount of drinking in them.
I know.
Exactly. Cheers. But there is, really quite a lot. Including in the latest one where they go to a resort where it's available 24 hours a day and almost on tap.
I think you didn't ask me a question, but I'm going to answer. the similar to what I was saying about how I'm often disappointed when I'm reading a book and it says, they say we watched a movie. I'm doubly disappointed if the book says, well, we watched a movie and had a few drinks. And again, I think, well, what drinks are they having? Because this is character. And, I'm not looking for, Ian Fleming's James Bond novels are famous for, every drink he has, he gives not only the year of the champagne and all that, but the whole history of it. But, I do like to know, because I think what people drink is their character. And so Bruce brings Abigail on a honeymoon on a sort of exclusive resort island that's just for sort of really high-end people. And he suddenly does a lot of talking about the sort of best drinks and the best wines and all this. So again, this is sort of a character thing. I'm not sure it matters as much to her. I also have always, since I've always written books about randomness of life, I always think of, I enjoy books where people sort of randomly stumble into a slightly off or scary world. I have a lot of stuff happen in bars, which I think are great places for people to meet strangers and have a drink and let their guard down and basically start off and something happening. And now that we don't go to bars anymore, I'm going to be at a little of a loss as to how to set my books in the future. Although maybe I'll just always set them in a perpetual 2018 or something like that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's also smoking in them. That's and in fact in this one is a sort of not really a sort of semi-clue almost. I don't want to give too much away, but wouldn't you be worried if the movie rights were sold, that would completely emaciate all of that no smoking, one drink, maybe a light beer or something, and the bar would become him or something?
Yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, first of all, my worry would be alleviated by the thrill of the movie rights being sold. I have optioned some of my books that none of them have been produced. The advice I most often receive, especially from my agent, is, don't worry about what they do with it. Just take the money and run. I think I'm going to quote it wrong. It might have been Hemingway says, you walk right up to the border of California. They hand their check across the border and you run the other way and never step inside. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. But yeah, that certainly might change. Although I will say, what was I watching? Oh, I was watching it's a UK production of J.K. Rowling's or Robert Galbraith or however you want to say that, the Strike series. Yeah. And I have to say, in that series, so is it a BBC series or
I think
ITV? I don't know, but here it was on something else. The character of Strike, I think, never doesn't have a cigarette between his lips, and often has a pint. So that they kept that, but maybe that's because it's J.K. Rowling and she can insist. So
yeah, I mean, well, Morse would have done the same, but
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure that all of your books, but a lot of your books are set in the same locale. Would that be correct?
Yeah, they're generally set in and around Boston.
Yeah.
In the New England area, and I would say the sort of outer areas are, southern Maine. I often put stuff there, and sometimes North Shore of Massachusetts. And I have set a couple sections of my books, on your side of the ocean there.
Yeah. But you wouldn't consider yourself a kind of regional writer or a Boston writer, or?
I do. I mean, it's not. not set in stone. I mean, I would happily set a book somewhere else. It's partly laziness in the sense that I know the area, and my books naturally gravitate toward this area. And it's partly that the area I live in, I think, is a good location for the type of books I write. So, Boston, I think, has some good character. And then the shoreline up here, especially if you head north from Boston up the shoreline, you get this sort of dramatic, rocky shores and small seaside villages. So I think I feel fortunate to live in an area that feels like a location of a crime thriller. So that's where I keep setting them.
Good enough for George V. Higgins and good enough for Robert B. Parker.
Exactly.
Yeah. I once did a signing session with Robert B. Parker.
Oh, you did?
And about 7 people turned up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know. Being an author, everyone think, you're a published author, you've kind of got it made, but there's so many humbling experiences await you, and they usually involve, the single person turnout at the bookstore reading and all sorts like things like that. I organized a signing once for Robert Parker right at Wordsworth Bookstore.
Oh, okay.
And of course, he before he died, I was around. He was a bit of a fixture. He lived right outside of Harvard Square, and he came in for a signing that we did better than 7. But I used to see him too at a nice little restaurant in Harvard Square called Harvest, which used to have a great bar. They've changed their bar setup. They used to have a great bar, and that was where he used to call them his writing vacation. So he'd write a book and then he'd take a writing vacation, and his writing vacation was generally down at Harvest, hanging out and keeping court. So he was a big influence. I read his books quite young. My mom had them, so I read the early Spencer books when I was like 10 or 11, and hugely influential to me, partly because I was like, I grew up in Massachusetts, and Boston was my city. I was a Red Sox fan, and it was like reading books in your neighborhood. And he was so funny and also good thrillers. So, I was a big fan.
Yeah, there was a point when he was quite well known in the UK, but now he's not at all, really, which is a big shame. But and actually, neither really is George V. Higgins, who they both had a time in the mid 80s when they were really well known in this country and people were buying all their books, but that kind of faded away. Anyway, you seem to be keeping up a 1 book a year schedule pretty accurately.
Yeah.
Have you got another one on the way?
I do. I mean, generally at this time of year, as my book is coming out, I've finished writing
the
next one. I mean, that's where you need to be in the publishing schedule. So it's not done being edited per se, but there's a good draft in place, and my editors are going to get back to me. But now I'm starting to think of the next one. But I feel good about my next one. I don't have a title. I mean, I have a title, but I doubt they don't, my editors don't like my titles in general. Or we just have to talk about them a lot and change them. But yeah, so my next one is definitely another sort of homage. This is a sort of a modern retelling or a modern reimagination of, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is probably my favorite crime novel of all time.
So another one set on an island.
It's not, and that's the trick. So I think I was sort of thinking, in what other way can strangers be brought together by crime? So it's not set on an island. That's what is the sort of reimagining. well, I can talk a little bit about it. It's actually sort of 9 strangers all receive a letter, and the letter is simply a list of 9 names, and theirs is on it. And then these 9 strangers begin to be killed off. And they're trying, as they're trying to solve who's doing this, they're also trying to solve what are the connections between these 9 people. And of course, they're not on an island, they're not trapped, but they are being hunted by someone they don't know. So in a sense, they're kind of trapped. And that's the plot of my next book.
Excellent. Well, I wish you very well with this one.
Thank you.
And we loved this one as well when we did it for one of our book groups, which is
Okay.
Obviously being done on Zoom at the minute. But yeah, well, thanks for joining us tonight, Peter.
Thanks. It's been fun. Thanks for sharing a beer with me. And
yeah, it was nice to have
a beer.
It's
quite a bit earlier over here, but that's okay. It's my publication day, the US. So
you weren't going to write this afternoon anyway, were you?
Yeah.
And Justine's waving at me saying, "Come and see us when you come to England." We'd be delighted.
I will, for sure. All right.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
They can find you a book for your girlfriend, your husband, your girl, or your boy. And if you've got a need for an uplifting read, Justine and Jonathan can pick out a book you'll enjoy. What a book at the Bookseller Crow on the hill. What a book at the Bookseller Crow on the hill. Crystal Palace Hill, that is. But you can order online.